Hello and welcome to Strange Stuff. My name is Andy.
And I'm Mark.
Hello.
Hi there, Andy.
Oh, there you are.
All right?
Yep. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Fine. I've got a bit of... Well, I've still got a bad back, if you can believe it.
What, from the rowing last week?
Yeah, but in fact, it's just I never give it a rest.
See,
I've been working on site,
keeping fit will be the fucking death of you.
Yeah, probably right. Now, I have to ask you, are you going to remember to press the record button this week, or are we going to have to do everything twice?
We're already recording.
Oh, good. Good, yeah.
I thought I'd get a head start on that.
It's the whole world of politics is just staggering to me. I mean, the numbskulls that they have reshuffled the cabinet with in the UK. It's just like Magic Roundabout or something, the characters that are appear there. No one is competent. No, there aren't any competent people there.
Well, there's only 68 million people to choose from.
Well, that is the ridiculous thing that when you think about it, if you were advertising for a job like the CEO of Philips or any major company, you've got the whole world to choose from. When you're employing ministers in a government, how many Tory MPs are there? 200.
300, isn't it?
Or 300. You've literally got a choice of only 300 people to take the most powerful and responsible positions in a country. So you're not tendering out to all of these people with real expertise. You're reliant on the pool of MPs. And we know the pool of MPs, they're all probably well-intentioned, but they're certainly not competent or skilled. Well, otherwise, they wouldn't be MPs.
The problem is they're not well-intentioned because nowadays they're all career MPs. It used to be a time when an MP was a second job and it was a calling.
Yes. Yeah, you're probably right, actually. I mean, I think we've talked about him before. He takes the biscuit, though. And admittedly, he's been sacked, the education fellow.
Yeah, the fireplace salesman.
The fireplace salesman. The fireplace salesman was in charge of the education of all British children. But anyway, Raab has gone, at least.
Well, he's been promoted.
No.
Deputy
Foreign
PM.
Secretary is number 2. No,
Deputy PM.
Foreign Secretary is number... Yeah, but that's like assistant PM. Is it the... No.
I mean, if Boris was assassinated, praise God, then we'd be stuck with Raab.
No. Really?
Yes.
I think... I don't know. I don't know whether the American politicians are as incompetent as the incumbents in the UK at the moment. I don't know.
I think they're pretty much a worldwide incompetent bunch of self-serving fucking arseholes.
It's a crazy old world, that's for sure. But it's unfortunate that politicians need to be voted in. It sounds ridiculous, but they spend most of their time just worrying about being re-elected. And it drives common sense out the door.
Yeah, but what would you rather? It was a job for life, like King?
No, well, actually, it's interesting. They were talking about the royal family just on the radio earlier while I was in the car. And funnily enough, I was thinking, if you got the right royal family in, would they do a worse job?
Yes, they would.
Than the current politicians that we've got,
yes.
Other than the inbreeding and lack of intellect.
Yes, they would. And the reason being, and I'm not a royalist. I like the royal family, but I certainly think that the time has well passed for the kowtowing and the tugging of the forelock, like the serfdom. And in fact, the whole hierarchy of the peerage, it's long past its sell-by date.
And needs overhauling.
It needs abolishing, really.
Oh,
I mean, we can keep the royal family as a memorial to past glory and shame, but certainly don't give them any official roles. Stop funding them. They've got enough money. Grab back the land they stole in 1066 and redistribute it amongst the people. I mean, like the British population. The British population owns 7% of the land mass of Great Britain.
Well, not 93. Not 93% is not owned by the king and the queen, the royal family.
The Duke of Westminster owns most of London.
No, I know, but that's not. No, but that can't be right, Andy.
Prince Charles owns most of Cornwall.
Well,
the Queen
doesn't.
owns vast tracts of Scotland. No, all right, they call it's state property, but what do you get out of it? What do I get out of it?
No, but there is a difference. There is a difference.
No, there isn't. That's like we as a people are being pushed into smaller and smaller living accommodations because there's no room to build. But actually, yes, there is. It just doesn't belong to us.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with the royal family and everything to do with the politicians.
That's why they've got to be. That's why they've got to go as well.
Oh well, yeah. What? And you're going to be running the country?
Why not? I bet you I wouldn't do a worse job than they're doing right now.
No, I would put money on you wouldn't do a worse job than they're doing now. No, but for the royal family, all I would say is, and I'm neither one way or the other, but ultimately I think a sense of duty, which they do understand, may be more meaningful than the political systems that we've got at the moment, and the politicians that we've got at the moment. They're always just looking self-interest. They have no concept of duty or working for the greater good. It's not in their mindset.
They have no honour.
They certainly have no honour. I don't know whether I just think it happens to be UK and the US are the sort of peak examples of self-interest driven politicians. If you look in Sweden, I think they're far more well-meaning people. And I think the same in other countries as well. I mean, they've got the Italians, which are all mad, of course, but
yeah, but they have the best parties.
They do. What was the name? Tonga, not Tonga parties. Bunga parties. That's right. Berlusconi.
Yeah, I want to be an Italian MP.
Actually, he fitted in well with last week's programme about eternal life. He seems to go on forever, that fellow.
And he's Teflon as well. Nothing sticks.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, if you've got enough money.
Anyway, we've wasted enough time waffling.
Yes, you're right. I phoned you early to get out of this thing, and you've been waffling for 15 minutes. So come on, tell us what's the riveting subject matter of today's programme is going to be about. Well, first of
all, we've got some business to attend to.
And that is?
This is our 10th programme.
Oh, is it?
Yes, it's a bit of a milestone.
It is, yeah.
And
it's amazing you and I have been able to be in conversation for 10 weeks in a row without having a major bust-up.
Yeah, but that's only because we're not in the same room.
You're right, actually. I can just turn you off if you go too far.
But, the other piece of business is that today's episode will be one that has been suggested by 2 of our listeners.
Really?
The first listener that we'd like to thank for the suggestion is Sarah Karis.
Yes.
Who is the girlfriend of Red Sven, friend of mine.
Okay, yes.
And the other one is Jimmy...
They're based in where, by the way? Where are they?
Oh, it's a good question. They're all over the place. As last I knew, they were living in Västerås.
All right, so they are sort of Sweden-based. Yeah, good.
They could be anywhere. The second one is Jimmy the Communist, who I work with.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, your phone's off.
Let me just deal with this. I'll be in there. Hello. It's Thursday. It's 5 o'clock. I'm podcasting. I'll speak to you in an hour or so. All right. Head on. Sorted.
Dear, oh dear.
Sorry, second one. I'm impressed we've got 2 listeners, let alone that they're willing to make subject
the
suggestions.
second one is Jimmy the Communist.
Okay.
Who I work with.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Surprisingly, they both fit in perfectly with today's theme.
Is Jimmy the Communist, is that his self-given, what do you call it when they're not a nickname? What is it when you're online?
His own moniker, as it were.
Yes.
No, I gave him that name only this week, in fact, when he started turning up wearing red.
That was it, was it?
And also he's a union representative, so that's proof positive as far as I'm concerned.
Good man, Jimmy.
Today's episode, we will be discussing the Dyatlov Pass incident in
The what?
Russia. The Dyatlov Pass incident.
What on earth is that?
Oh, this is a fantastic story, and it is very strange. It's the story
I can't believe, just hang on a second, this thing that I've never heard of, it talk about minority interest subject. This must only appeal to such a small percentage of the population, and of the 3 listeners that we've got, 2 of them came up with the same suggestion,
which suggests to me that it's less of a minority interest than you might be aware of, and therefore you are in the minority.
Maybe. So sorry, what's this thing called? A pass, is that as in a mountain pass, or
yes,
yes,
it's the Dyatlov Pass incident. It focuses on a group of 10 hikers in 1959 in northern Russia. They were an experienced trekking group, basically, from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by a chap called Igor Dyatlov.
Right.
The group was made up of fellow students and peers, all of a similar age from the university. And Igor Dyatlov himself was aged 23, and he was a radio engineering student.
Yes.
He was also a highly experienced hiker, and in Russia in those days they had 3 grades or 3 qualifications for hiking, and he was a grade 2 hiker, and the purpose of this trip was to get everybody up to grade 3 hiker, which was the highest qualification you could get as a hiker in Russia. Now, to give you some idea of how difficult this would be, you needed to get your certification, you had to traverse 190 miles. The route had to be difficult. It had to be a difficult time of year, and there were penalties for anything that made it easier. For instance,
shoes.
This wouldn't wash today, but they weren't allowed to take any 2-way radio communication. That would have turned it into a grade 2 expedition.
Okay, so you're really out on your own. Well,
yeah.
No, apart from that, in your group, 10 people, you say?
Yes, 10 hikers.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you now.
They all die.
9 of them died.
Right.
And it's important to know this because they're dead. We can't change that. But as I say, the group was formed for a skiing expedition against the northern Urals. They were headed to a place called Sverdlovsk Oblast, and according to the prosecutor,
there's a crime.
Possibly. Documents that were found in the tent of the expedition suggest that the expedition was named for the 21st Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Igor Dyatlov, the radio engineering student, was the leader, who assembled a group of 9 others. Each member of the trip, which consisted of 8 men and 2 women, was an experienced grade 2 hiker with also ski tour experience, and they would be receiving the grade 3 certification on their return.
Right.
The route was designed by Dyatlov's group to reach the far northern regions of the oblast and the upper streams of the Lovzva River.
Right.
The route had to be approved by the City Route Commission, which was a division of the Sverdlovsk Committee of Physical Culture and Sport.
Yes.
And they confirmed the route and the group of 10 people on January the 8th, 1959. Now, the final goal of the expedition was
That was the year you were born.
No, that was, if you remember, it was your 30th birthday party. The goal of the expedition was to reach Ortorten, which was a mountain 10 kilometres north of the site where the incident occurred.
Yeah.
And as I say, the route undertaken in February was estimated as a Category 3, the most difficult time to traverse.
Yes.
The area where they started their expedition, there's a native hill tribe. They were called the Mansi, and they had their own dialect. The area where they were headed was called Kolat-Siakal, which translates into English as "don't go there."
Ah, right, yes. So they clearly ignored that.
And the mountain itself, or Torten, translates into
"I told you, don't go there."
Dead mountain.
Oh, God.
Now, apart from those 2 portents, There wasn't much holding them back. But having said that, it's generally accepted that Don't Go There and Dead Mountain were not warnings of danger, but just as they were a reindeer hunting and farming clan, they basically mean that that is not good hunting ground and that is not fertile land. It's just pointless going anywhere near it.
All right, yeah. So
Now,
these people set off February.
Before they set off, I just want to make it clear that, as I say, they were all grade 2 certificated.
We've got that.
They were all also civil engineer students, science students. One of them was destined to become a cosmonaut student. They were well...
Oh, destined. He didn't become because he died.
But they were all very well educated and very physically strong and able people. Not like the students of today, where they can't even get out of the bed and drop their iPad on the floor. These people got up early and did the business. They set out. Their group arrived by train at Ivdel, which is a town at the centre of the northern province of the Oblast, in the early morning hours of January the 25th. They then took a truck to a village called Vishai, which is the last inhabited settlement to the north. While in Vishai, they managed to talk their local school into giving them a place for the night to stay. And in return, they spoke to the students about hiking. Also, one of the group had a mandolin with him, and he decided to do a bit of entertaining stroke busking in the town.
All right.
Whereupon he was arrested by the police because they're much like the Swedish town of Mora. They frown upon entertainment. But he was only kept for a couple of hours and didn't interfere with the travel plans. So while they were there, they purchased loaves of bread to keep their energy levels up for the following day's hike. On January the 27th, they began their trek towards Ortorten, and they spent the first night up the mountain with no undue problems. Then on January the 28th, one of the members, Yuri Yurdin, who suffered from several health ailments, including rheumatism and a congenital heart defect, suffered so much pain with his sciatica that he said it was unfair of him to continue. So he basically shared his pack load amongst the other 9 and headed back towards the town of Vishai, which now leaves us with the 9.
Right.
The reason he said it was unfair is because on an expedition like this, they only took exactly the equipment they needed, and that equipment was divvied up between everybody on the expedition. So you were responsible for carrying your own food, your own skis, your own every piece of equipment you needed for yourself, plus a portion of the group supplies,
right?
Emergency medical equipment, etc., or any other group supplies that might have been needed at that time. So he was a great loss to the expedition, but everyone on the expedition was young and strong, and they had no problem with sharing his load, although
I don't understand it. How did this bloke with rheumatism and sciatica get through the net? He couldn't have been young and strong. Rheumatism?
Listen, the Russian kids are so much stronger. In fact,
maybe
I might look for a Russian wife. Can you imagine how quickly they power through the washing and the cleaning?
Yeah, they power through you as well.
Well, if I was lucky.
Anyway, 10 Russian hikers went up a mountain and 1 fell off, 9 left.
Okay, I want to quickly go through who they were.
Do you?
We've got because, they died, and I think out of respect, we should at least name them.
Yes, go for it.
Obviously, we have Igor Dyatlov,
yes,
who's the leader of the expedition and who the Dyatlov Pass came to be named after.
Yes.
We have several Yuris. We have Yuri Doroshenko,
yep,
who is another male, aged 21. We have Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the females. She was 20.
Yeah.
We have Georgy Krivoshenko, another male, aged 23. We have Alexander Kolyavatov. Sorry about the pronunciations here. Age 24, male. Zinaida Kolmogorova, who was the second female, age 22. Rustum Slobodan, a 23-year-old male. And we have Nikolai, I'm not even going to attempt him. It's Thibaut Brignoles.
Yeah.
Age 23 and a male. And we have one Semyon Zolotaryov, who was actually the only stranger in the group. He was thrown in at the last minute, and he was a 38-year-old male who was a war hero. He'd fought in the Second World War. I don't know if you're aware, but in the Second World War, of all the Russian soldiers that went to fight, 97% of them died. Only 3%
20 million of them,
back.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an enormous number.
Yeah.
Only 3% survived. So he was a survivor and a hero of the mother country, obviously. And he was also a professor at the university.
Okay.
There was some trepidation about him joining the party because Igor Dyatlov was very capable and very experienced, and he was the designated leader of this expedition, but they were all a bit worried that because of his age and because of his war status and the professorship, that once they started, Semyon might try to take over the expedition and become the leader. But as it turned out, that was baseless. He was more than happy to take orders and be part of the crowd, and he more than carried his own weight.
Yeah, yeah.
So, on January the 28th, Yuri Yudin, who is our 10th member, he's the one who turned back due to illness, and he actually survived until the 27th of April 2013, whereupon he died at the age of 75.
Really?
Yeah.
And is he the one who told the story? No, of course he couldn't have told the story. Well, he could have told his part of the story, but
his part of the story was quite important, but it's certainly not him who told the story. Anyway, amongst our other supplies that everyone was carrying were personal diaries and some cameras.
okay.
The reason for the personal diaries was because they were encouraged to write about their feelings and their experiences as part of, I don't know, the Soviet Union liked to know everything about their people. But they also had a group diary, which they took turns in writing and keeping record of what they did on each day.
Okay.
And these were also very useful. Now, on the third night...
How long did they reckon? It would probably take about 10 days to walk 190 miles, 20 miles a day, or is that
really,
too much in a mountainous area?
Yeah, we're talking about 17 days minimum.
All right, okay,
You're
fine.
talking about climbing up a mountain where you can find 10 feet of snow.
All right, fine. So it was 17 days was the plan. So they're 3 days in.
Yeah. So, yeah, as I say, diaries and cameras made it possible to track their route up to the incident. And on the 31st of January, we know that the group arrived at the edge of a highland area and began to prepare for climbing. Now, in a wooded valley, they cached surplus food and equipment that would be used on the trip back. So it was quite normal to make a store, which they did in this wooded area. And so the next day, they camped the night in the woods. And then the next day, they started to move through the pass. And it seems like the plan was to get over the pass and make camp for the next night on the opposite side. But because of the worsening weather conditions, snowstorms and decreasing visibility, they lost their direction and they deviated west towards the top of Kholat Syakhl. When they realised their mistake, the group decided to set up their camp on the slope of the mountain rather than move 1.5 kilometres downhill to a forested area that would have offered some shelter.
Right.
Yudin, the guy who turned back, speculated about this, and he said Dyatlov probably didn't want to lose the altitude they had gained because moving through that kind of weather, their speed was about 1 mile an hour.
Okay, yeah.
And he decided that he'd probably be better off practicing camping on the mountain slope.
All right.
Yeah, before leaving, Dyatlov had agreed that he would send a telegram to their sports club as soon as the group returned to the village of Vizhai, and it was expected that this would happen no later than the 12th of February. But Dyatlov had told Yudin before he departed from the group that he expected it to be a bit longer because of the weather. And when the 12th came and went and no messages had been received, there wasn't an immediate panic, as delays of a few days were quite common with such expeditions and such conditions.
Okay.
By the 20th of February, however, the travellers' relatives demanded a rescue operation, and the head of the institute sent the first rescue groups consisting of volunteer students and teachers. Later, the army and the militia forces became involved, with planes and helicopters ordered to join the operation.
Okay.
Oh, before we go any further...
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Good timing.
Yeah, I didn't want that to go too far. They've been missing now, or they've been overdue now for 6 days. And on the 26th of February, the searchers found the group's abandoned and badly damaged tent on Kolet Sayak. Now, there's something I should have said about the tent. It was Igor Dyatlov was a very ingenious fella, and he'd taken 2 large tents and he'd basically sewn them together to make one extra large tent so that everybody could sleep in the same tent.
Right.
What he'd also done was he'd built a stove which wasn't for cooking. It was basically a heating stove which could be placed inside the tent to add extra warmth.
Yes.
So that came from his engineering know-how.
Right.
The tent itself, when they found the campsite, the search party were a bit baffled because the tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and this is where it starts to get weird. Investigators said the tent had been cut open from the inside. Now, this tent had entrance and exit at each end. They also had locks so that you couldn't just open the zip and climb out. It could be secured, which is for your safety, obviously. Yeah. It apparently had been cut open from the inside. Inside the tent, most of the group's belongings were found, including clothing and shoes. Outside the tent, 9 sets of footprints were left by people wearing only socks or a single shoe, and some were barefoot. They could be followed, leading down to the edge of a nearby wood on the opposite side of the pass, 1.5 kilometres to the northeast. After 5,000 metres, these tracks were covered with snow. But at the forest edge, under a large pine, the searchers found the visible remains of a small fire, and this was where they found the first 2 bodies. Those of Kirovinchenko and Doroshenko. They were both shoeless and dressed only in their underwear. The branches on the tree were broken up to 5 metres high, suggesting that one of the skiers had climbed up to look for something, perhaps the camp. And between the pine and the camp, the searchers found 3 more corpses: Dyatlov, Kolmogorova and Slobodan, who died in poses suggesting that they were attempting to return to the tent. They were found at distances of 300, 480 and 630 metres from the tree. So it looks like they died one after the other. Now, the cause of death for all 5 of these students was listed as hypothermia. Now,
so there was there's no bear attack sort of evidence or anything like that?
There's no physical injuries to the 5 people that they found so far, but there's also no explanation as to what caused them to
run
leave
out of the
tent at such a rate of knots that they had to cut their way out and not even bother getting dressed. It's also quite puzzling as to why would you take off your socks in the first place when you're in a tent and it's minus 20 degrees outside.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it. You'd leave your shoes on, in fact.
I mean, I would actually dress up further to go to bed. I mean, we live in Sweden. I don't get undressed to go to bed. I barely take my top off to get in the shower.
Yeah, but that's for other reasons, Andy. We don't need to go into that. All right, so 5 of these poor students have popped their clogs in very uncertain circumstances.
Yeah. Now, finding the remaining 4 travellers took more than 2 months.
Oh, God. Yeah.
They were finally found on the 4th of May under 4 metres of snow in a ravine, 75 metres further into the woods from the pine tree.
All right, so they were actually close by. It's just they'd fallen off into a ravine.
Possibly.
Okay.
3 of the 4 were better dressed than the others, and there were some signs that some of the clothing of those that had died first had been removed for use by the others.
Ah, yes. Okay, that's starting to make a bit of sense.
Dubinina was wearing...
The girl.
Oh, you remember the girl?
Yeah.
She features later as well.
Oh, dear.
Dubinina was wearing Krivoshenko's burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket that didn't belong to her.
Okay.
An examination of the 4 bodies shifted the narrative of the incident. 3 of the hikers had fatal injuries. Thibaut Brignoles had major skull damage, and Dubnina and Zolotoyrov had major chest fractures. And according to Boris Bozrojdeny, the force required to cause such damage would have been extremely high, comparable to that of a car crash. Notably, the bodies had no external wounds, including soft tissue damage, associated with the bone fractures, almost as if they had been subjected to a high level of pressure.
Bear hug.
All 4 bodies, found at the bottom of the creek of a running stream of water, had soft tissue damage to their head and face. Dubinina was missing her tongue, which had appeared torn out at the root.
Oh, my God.
Her eyes and her top lip were also missing,
Bear.
as
It's
well
gotta
as
be a bear
facial,
attack.
as well as facial tissue and a fragment of skull bone. Zolotoroyov had his eyeballs missing.
Oh, I don't want to go into all of this detail, these poor people.
We need to.
It's a bear attack.
We need to. And Alexander Kolevatov had one of his eyebrows ripped out so deeply that you could see the bone of the skull.
All right.
The forensic expert performing the post-mortem examination judged at the time that these injuries happened post-mortem due to the location of the bodies in the stream. There was initial speculation that the Mansi people, the reindeer herders local to the area, had attacked and murdered the group for encroaching upon their lands, and several of them were interrogated. But the nature of the deaths didn't support this hypothesis. Only the hikers' footprints were visible, and they showed no sign of hand-to-hand struggle. Although the temperature was very low, the dead were only partially dressed. Some had only one shoe, while others only wore socks. And some were found wrapped in bits of ripped clothing that seemed to have been cut from those that were already dead. So the journalists reporting on the available parts of the inquest claimed that it stated 6 of the group members died of hypothermia and 3 of fatal injuries. There were no indications of other people nearby. Tent had been ripped open from inside. The victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal, and traces from the camp showed that all group members left the campsite of their own accord on foot. Now is where it gets a little bit weirder. Some levels of radiation were found on one victim's clothing.
Right.
Now, one of the students had worked at a secret plutonium installation where they'd had a bit of an accident a couple of years previously, and he was involved in a clean-up. But it was 2 years previously, and if his clothes still stank of radiation 2 years later, he was definitely in need of a good wash.
Oh, so sorry. Just to remind me, have they established how long after they set off did all of this happen?
Yeah, they spent 3 nights on the mountain.
So 3 nights are logged into the diaries. And
well, it
such,
happened on the 3rd night.
So we know it all happened on the 3rd night. It took a few days to find 5 of them, and then a couple of months to find the other 4.
Yeah.
All right. But it's suspected it all happened at the same time.
Oh, yeah. And to dispel the theory of an attack by the Mansi, it was stated by the forensic scientist that sorry, my watch said something. That the fatal injuries on the 3 bodies could not have been caused by human beings because the force of the blows had been too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged. Released documents contained no information about the condition of the skiers' internal organs. And also because there were no survivors, they were limited on the information they could gather. At the time, the official conclusion was that the group members died because of a compelling natural force. And the inquest officially ceased in May 1959 as a result of the absence of a guilty party. And the files were sent to a secret archive. And this is where all the conspiracy theories started, because there was no closure. Now, in 1997, it was revealed that the negatives from Krivonishenko's camera were kept in the private archive of one of the investigators, a guy called Lev Ivanov. The film material was donated by Ivanov's daughter to the Dyatlov Foundation, and the diaries of the hiking party fell into Russia's public domain in 2009.
Okay. And what did they discover when they processed the film?
Well, in the aftermath, some researchers criticised the initial investigation because, as I say, the original explanation didn't make any sense. There was even an official American hypothesis that there was a Yeti involved.
Ah, yes. I forgot Yeti. Of course, I said bear. It could have been Yeti.
Now,
Bigfoot.
Because the group woke up in a panic and they cut their way out of the tent, either because an avalanche had covered the entrance to the tent or because they were scared that an avalanche was imminent. Better to have a potentially repairable slit in a tent than risk being buried alive under tons of snow.
Or it could have been 2 Yetis, one at each end of the tent, and they had to cut their way out the middle.
As the tent was locked front and back, how would they have seen these alleged Yetis?
I don't know. I don't know what language Yetis speak.
Probably Russian.
Yes, exactly.
They lived in Russia.
All right, yeah. So we haven't got very far in terms of a real explanation yet.
Okay, they were poorly clothed because they'd been sleeping, and they ran to the safety of nearby woods where the trees would help slow the oncoming snow and break up the avalanche. In the darkness of night, they got separated into 2 or 3 groups. One group made a fire, hence the burned hands, while the others tried to return to the tent to recover their clothing since the danger had passed. But it was too cold, and they froze to death before they could locate their tent in the darkness. At some point, some of the clothes may have been recovered or swapped from the dead, but at any rate, the group of 4 whose bodies were most severely damaged were caught in an avalanche and buried under 4 metres of snow, more than enough to account for the compelling natural force the medical examiner described.
All right.
And Dubinina's tongue was likely removed by scavengers and ordinary predation.
Yes.
Was the original explanation.
Okay. And when did that idea get kiboshed?
The location of the incident did not have any obvious signs of an avalanche having taken place. An avalanche would have left certain patterns and debris distributed over a wide area, and the bodies found within a month of the event were covered with a very shallow layer of snow. And had there been an avalanche of sufficient strength to sweep away the second party, these bodies would have been swept away as well. This would have caused much more serious and different injuries in the process, and would also have damaged the tree line.
Yeah.
Over 100 expeditions to the region have been held since the incident, and none of them have ever reported conditions that might create an avalanche. An analysis of the terrain and slopes showed that even if there could have been a very specific avalanche that found its way into the area, its path would have probably gone past the tent, and the tent had collapsed from the side, but not in a horizontal direction.
All right.
Dyatlov was also an experienced skier, and the much older Zolotaryov was studying for his master's certificate in ski instruction and mountain hiking. So neither of these 2 men would have been likely to camp anywhere near in the path of a potential avalanche. Also, footprint patterns leading away from the tent were consistent with people walking rather than running in panic from either real or imagined danger. All the footprints leading away were consistent with individuals who were walking at a normal pace.
I think this clothing thing is completely bizarre, because you're absolutely right. There's no way in the world that people would take clothes off sleeping overnight in a tent when it's minus 20 outside.
Yeah.
No way.
Now, another theory is something called a katabatic wind. In 2019, a Swedish-Russian expedition was made to the site, and after the investigations, they proposed that the katabatic wind was a plausible explanation for the incident. Now, katabatic winds are somewhat rare events, and they can be extremely violent. They were implicated in a 1978 case at Anaris Mountain in Sweden, where 8 hikers were killed and 1 was severely injured in the aftermath of katabatic wind.
And what is this katabatic wind? Never heard of it.
It's not in front of me, but I do remember because I've listened to a couple of podcasts on this. A katabatic wind is like a localised tornado.
Okay, yeah.
That can just sort of spring up out of nowhere.
All right.
Cause major destruction and then just vanish.
Okay.
Another hypothesis, the wind going around Kholat Syakhl created Kármán vortex street, which can produce infrasound. Now, infrasound is a natural phenomenon, but it's also a man-made phenomenon, which lots of governments have played with in sort of weaponizing sound. And what it does is it creates sound on such a low frequency that you can't hear it, but it tickles the hairs of your inner ear and plays around with your mind so that your ear thinks it's hearing something, your brain says it isn't, and it induces fear, dread and panic, and also sort of a deep melancholy, and it can basically turn you mad.
And is this in conjunction with this katabatic wind, or is this a different theory?
This is a different theory.
All right.
So there's claims that because of the panic caused by the infrasound, the hikers were driven to leave the tent by whatever means possible and necessary, because maybe they thought they were being attacked by yetis, and they fled down the slope. By the time they were further down the hill, they would have been out of the infrasound's path and would have regained their composure. But in the darkness, they would have been unable to return. And the traumatic injuries suffered by 3 of the victims could have been the result of their stumbling over the edge of a ravine in the darkness and landing on the rocks at the bottom. However, the injuries, especially to the chests of 2 of the victims, were not consistent with a fall. There's another speculation that the campsite fell within the path of a Soviet parachute mine exercise. And this theory alleges that the hikers, woken by loud explosions, fled the tent in a shoeless panic and found themselves unable to return for their supplies. And after some members froze to death, attempting to endure the bombardment, others commandeered their clothing only to be fatally injured by subsequent parachute mines concussions. And there are records of parachute mines being tested by the Soviet military in the area around the time the hikers were there.
Oh, right, okay,
And
yeah.
parachute mines detonate while still in the air rather than upon striking the Earth's surface.
So they're more destructive.
And they produce signature injuries similar to those experienced by the hikers. Heavy internal damage with relatively little external trauma.
Well, there we go.
That theory also coincides with reported sightings of glowing orange orbs floating or falling in the sky within the general vicinity of the area, and the hikers allegedly photographed them because the films from the cameras were never released.
But now they have been. One of them, the daughter of someone, did release one of the films.
Yes, but this theory uses scavenging animals to explain Dubinina's injuries. Some speculate the bodies were unnaturally manipulated on the basis of characteristic liver mortis markings discovered during an autopsy, as well as burns to the hair and the skin. Photographs of the tent allegedly showed it was erected incorrectly, something that the experienced hikers were unlikely to have done. The reasoning behind this speculation is because it's been speculated that they stumbled across some kind of secret military testing and were eliminated.
That sounds most plausible.
Especially in Russia in the 50s.
Exactly. Late
Bearing
50s.
in mind
59.
the young lady who lost her tongue, Dubininka, in her stomach during the autopsy was found over 100 grams of coagulated blood, which suggests
Yes, she was alive
that
when
she was
this
alive when her tongue was ripped out.
Oh, God.
Now, she was known to be feisty, and if she had
I
been
don't know what feisty. Feisty, do you mean?
feisty,
Yes.
and if she had indeed been surrounded by soldiers who were ordering her to kneel down to take a bullet in the head, she would have told them to kiss my arse.
All right. And has there... So that is the most reasonable explanation to what happened to these people.
Well, the theory also, don't forget the radiation on the clothing, and it's possible that the testing of radiological weapons could have caused that. Also, the families, when they were shown the bodies, it was mentioned that some of the corpses had an unnaturally dark tan and their hair had turned preternaturally white or grey.
All right. Well, there we go. Sorted. It's the Russian military in the late 50s. Well, you've solved it for me anyway.
Okay, well, the Russian government actually came out last year with an official explanation.
And that was...
Avalanche. So we know
course.
that is nonsense.
Yep,
Your
indeedy.
favourite word.
Indeedy.
Yeah, a lot of people also think that UFOs play a part in this story, which would also explain the radiation and the strange burns.
Well, why do people assume that UFOs are going to be radioactive?
Well, you assume a bear commits every murder in the whole entire world.
No, it's only 2 episodes that I've come up with the bear theory.
Yeah, one of them was on a bus.
That's right. Well, eventually, can you give me a story where it was a bear?
Well, I'm not going to say yes, because obviously you'll be waiting for it.
All right, well, that's, yeah, it's pretty weird.
It is a weird story, and it's still, as far as I'm concerned, unexplained. I don't accept the avalanche theory.
No, but the Russian military one seems to tick all the boxes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's convenient, though. I mean, wouldn't you rather have a paradox, something unsolvable? Wouldn't you rather let your imagination fill in the gaps? Rather than a guy in a Soviet uniform.
No,
with
well,
a pair
that's the
of pliers
danger.
for pulling out your tongue.
That's where you end up looking for explanations, and you go onto the dark web conspiracy theory.
Well, I'd just like to
website
point out that every
spouts out a load of
conspiracy.
nonsense.
I'd just like to point out that every conspiracy theory I've spouted in the last 18 months has come to pass.
What? I hope you don't end up like one of that. Who was that poor radio presenter who?
David Icke, my hero.
No. The one who was doing a U in America saying it's all nonsense, and then unfortunately popped his clogs because he got COVID and died from it. Yeah.
So anyway, that was the story of the Dyatlov Pass.
And I have to say, I still can't imagine that 2 people came up with the same idea.
when I was researching this, I came across at least 10 podcasts that have covered it.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite a very popular subject. Mystery.
Now,
is
honestly,
always
Andy,
fun.
is ours the best? Is ours the best?
Highly unlikely.
Yeah, you're right.
At least I hope sort of entertaining.
Oh, yeah, we live in hope. Well, that's good. Well done, those 2 contributors. Not
Yeah.
contributors, listeners.
And we'd be more than happy to take any other suggestions from literally anybody else.
Yeah, because you can
Let us
obviously
know
tell we're really
that you're listening.
scraping the bottom of the barrel already. It's only 10 weeks in.
We're not scraping the bottom of the barrel at all. That is a genuinely interesting story.
No, you're right. I'm just a bit worried what happens if we carry on doing this for a year and it's 52 weeks.
Oh, I'm sure I can scrape some stories together.
Yeah. No,
Anyway.
it was mildly interesting, and I have a feeling the military angle has got to be the one.
That's your favourite, is it?
Well, it's just the most, if I had to try and explain something like that, that seems to be the most sensible.
Well, I'm going with the Yetis, followed by the UFOs.
Oh, yeah, well, you would do, wouldn't you? Good, well done. Yep.
Anyway, I'd like to say thanks to listening. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep.
Both of you, 3 of you now. Feel free to contact us on www.strangestuffpodcast.com, where you'll find our email link, a link to our Instagram, and a link to our Twitter. And I've never said this before, and I don't know why. Try and subscribe to us so that you never miss an episode.
Oh,
Because
yes.
you will get an update as to when we release.
Very good idea. What do you subscribe on? You subscribe on?
Any of your
Podcasting
what's names?
Yeah.
Follow and subscribe.
Yes, yes. Follow and subscribe. That sounds good.
It sounds like you have to pay money, but you really don't.
It's free.
Yeah,
Sort of. We'll get you in the end.
we will. But in the meantime, as I say, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again for the next episode.